format of this. Okay, so this particular session is about Ethernet. Next, we'll quickly move on to the other protocol of the data link, that is ARP. ARP is also one very important protocol which is used as part of the communication, because this is where we have learned in the morning that there are two addressing mechanisms. One is the IP addressing mechanism, the other one is the MAC address, right? We have only two kind of addressing systems in the communication. But as we said, the IP is a logical kind of communication, because let's say in a network, let's say I'm connected to a network of 100 systems, or let's say take an example of only 10 systems. Okay, so in these 10 systems, I want to send a communication from system A to system B. Let's say we talk, this is a system A. The IP address is 90.1 and its corresponding MAC address is all A's. Now let's say there is other system 90.2 with a MAC address of BB, 90.3 there is a MAC address of CC, 91.4 there's a MAC address of DD, and so on, right? So now in this kind of scenario, now let's say I want to talk from this 90.1 to this particular system. So what I will do, but I am carrying this IP. By only knowing the IP, I do not know where exactly the system is there on the network, because all these systems are connected to a one single network, let's say, but I just want to pinpoint exactly where this system is located on the network. How I should know if I want to pinpoint this? I will use this IP as the communication to contact. Let's say I'm trying to contact 91.4. What I will do, I'm trying to find out this 91.4 on this network, but who is the sender? Let's say this is the sender, 90.1. Okay, now this is one request, it's called ARP request. Now we'll get the ARP reply with a MAC address, because again on the network I'm talking only through, as we have seen in the morning session also. So the local communication is only happening with respect to the MAC addresses only. Why? Because we already know we are connected to a switch network in all the Ethernet standard or in the organizations. So this switch also plays an important role in actually communicating the devices with respect to the communication. Let's say there are 10 systems which are connected to a switch. Switch is nothing but, let's say 10 systems means there are 10 ports on the switch. Now the switch, what it will do and how this ARP will work, we'll try to understand in a scenario. Now let's say a system A is connected to port 1 of the switch. Now there is a system D which is connected to port 4. Now this A wants to have some communication with D, right? A and D is nothing but the kind of systems that are connected on port 1 and port 4. Okay, now whenever now let's say this again, A is having an IP address of 90.1 with a MAC address of AA. This 90.1 is sending the communication to 90.4 with an MAC address of DD. Now, whenever in any network, let's say I don't know what is the target, because I know only the IP address. I don't know where this machine is exactly located on the network. Now, let's say there is a crowd, or there is a meeting. If I don't know who is the exact person that I'm trying to, I know only the name, but I don't know who is that person in the meeting. What we generally do, we'll make an announcement saying that who is so-and-so Mr. X. Similarly, whenever we initiate a communication, let's say the system A wants to talk to system D, but I don't know where this D is located. So this system A, what it will do, it broadcasts to the entire network. Network in the sense, let's say my IP address is 90.1. So I will try to contact every system on 90.0 network. So I will say who is 90.4 to, and I will send this communication at the initial communication as a broadcast network. What is this broadcast? Broadcast nothing but it will reach to each and every system on the network, right? So again, it will go to the switch also. Now we say generally switch is an intelligent device. Why? Because switch maintains a table called as IP to MAC address mapping. Now, whenever this first request reaches the switch, so switch understands that on port A, there is a communication coming from system A. It doesn't, system A is only for our understanding. The switch will understanding on port A, there is a communication from 90.1 with a MAC address of AA. So it will make an entry in the table saying that for IP address 90.1, there is a MAC address AA. Now, where this system is trying to connect, it is trying to connect on 90.4. Now, even the switch at the initial stage, it doesn't know where is 90.4. Now, again, what the switch will do? Switch will also broadcast to, because the first request of ARP request is a broadcast. We have to blindly remember this. ARP request is always a broadcast. ARP is nothing but the address resolution protocol, which is used to translate the IP address to the MAC address. So we know the IP address, but we want to pinpoint where this system exactly is located on the network using the MAC address. So this ARP request, the switch will also try to broadcast to all the systems on its ports which are connected to it. Even 90.4 is connected to port D. The switch will also transfer that to the port D also. Now, out of these 10 systems, who will reply? Only 90.4 will reply, because the system A is actually asking where this 90.4 is located. So this 90.1 communication is sent to 90.4. Now 90.4 will actually reply to 90.1. Now again, the communication from 90.4, that is the system that is connected on port D of the switch, is sent to the switch. Now again, switch in this case, again, what it will do? Now again, it has received a communication on port 4 from 90.4 with DD, right? So this MAC address again entered into the switch. Now it has got two entries on port A with the system 90.1 with MAC address AA, on port D with the system 90.4 and MAC address DD. So now let's say the second time when system A wants to talk to system D, now what it will do? Now there is no need for broadcast now. The ARP will not come into picture. Why? Because already the switch knows where the machines are connected. A and D are connected on port A and port D respectively. Now the next communication, whatever it may be, it will be the one-to-one communication between the two machines. Similarly, the switch will try to understand all the connected systems to it. Accordingly, it will try to send the communication one-to-one. So this is where the switch will act as an intelligent device. And again, we say switch is a layer 2 device because we are talking about the ARP protocols at layer 2, that is data link. So the switch can only run with this functionality only. Okay, so this particular kind of information or the layer 2 communication is only possible because of address resolution protocol. So what are the protocols that are available on this particular ARP? So we have a different set of parameters on the ARP protocol. The first one is called hardware address type. What is the hardware address type? Because we are using this ARP in association with the physical thing. So based on the hardware address type, the particular address length will also vary. Okay, the current standard is Ethernet. So the MAC address or the physical address that we use for the Ethernet standard is 48-bit. Like how we use IP version 4 as 32-bit addressing scheme, the MAC address length is 48-bit, out of which the first 24 bytes, because as we know that the MAC address is unique to the vendor or to the particular card, network card. So again, there is a classification that the first 24 bits will be dedicated to the vendor. Now let's say Microsoft is actually producing a network interface card. So the first 24 bits will actually, the Microsoft will have a code. So based on that code, we can identify the vendor. Now let's say there is a Cisco device. Cisco is producing the NIC cards. So the first 24 bytes belongs to Cisco. The rest of the 24 bits belong to the unique identifier of that particular product which they have developed. So the combination of this vendor ID as well as the product ID, this entire thing will be unique to that particular device anywhere in the world. So this is how the physical address will be unique. So, but our tool, as we have seen, this is also intelligent enough, because as we have seen, now let's say this is the 48-bit MAC address length. We have 00E04C 3605C2. Let's say this is my 48-bit MAC address in hexadecimal format. As we have seen, the first 24 bits 00, E0 and 4C, this belong to the vendor. Now you can see this is already converted into the kind of vendor, because already we know these vendor ports are already once they take the license, it is fixed. So even the tool is trying to able to convert this also. So it says it is Realtek. That means whatever the NIC card of this source, this belongs to the Realtek vendor, right? And the rest of the things 3605C2, this belongs to this particular device card. So as a whole, this 00E04C 3605C2. So this is the unique MAC address of this particular device. Okay. So similarly, every device will have a combination of its vendor as well as its kind of scenario. So we can see, and also we can see the broadcast. Whenever there is a broadcast, all the bits are set to 1, that is all Fs. So whenever you see a packet with all Fs, the MAC address, then we need to understand that it is a broadcast address which is sent to all the systems on the network, right? So similarly, we have hardware address type, which is nothing but the Ethernet address type. We have protocol address type. Again, I'm not going much into the bits and the address lengths, but we'll see what are the parameters that are available in each and every header, so that because every parameter has its own set of functionality value in terms of header. The protocol address type is nothing but the internet header which we use, whether it is IP version 4 or version 6. And we have hardware address length. If it is Ethernet, then it is 48-bit MAC address. If it is protocol is version 4, then we have 32. If it is version 6, then we have 128-bit accordingly. And this is the operation we are going to use for the ARP. If it is a request, there is a different opcode. If it is a reply, there is a different opcode. Opcode is nothing but the operation code. Again, we have source hardware address. Actually, this entire bit value is 32-bit. So it is from 0 to 32 plus, because as the MAC address is 48 bits, so 32 plus 16. So it is continuing the next value also. So hardware address is 48-bit, and source protocol address, it is 32 bits. So again, 16 plus 16, 32. Next, we have the target hardware address. Again, it is 48. Then we have a target protocol address. So what generally the ARP contains, so the hardware value, the Ethernet value, what is the protocol, the hexadecimal code is 0800, for Ethernet is 080x001. The hardware size is 6 is nothing but 6 into 8 bits, that is 48-bit address length. The protocol size is 32-bit, 4 into 8, 32-bit. And this is the opcode. For request, it is 0001. If it is 0001, we need to understand it is ARP request. And the next one is the sender MAC address, the 48-bit address of the sender IP address 90.2, the target MAC address. Because it is a ARP request, we don't know what is the target MAC address from where it has to send. So it is all zeros. And the target IP address, because we know only the target IP address, so we are sending it as target IP address. This we'll see in practical. Now what I will do, I'll run Wireshark. I'm again restarting the Wireshark. Now we'll try to capture some of the ARP packets. Okay, so before that, I'll show you one thing. ARP-A. So this is one native command which is available in all the operating systems. Not only the switch, every operating system will also maintain its own ARP table. Okay, so whenever I type ARP-A, I can see there is a lot of communication, like, okay, this particular interface 192.168.10.2. So this is the IP address for which this is the MAC address which is associated. So for every IP address, the MAC address is already listed in the table. So every operating system will also maintain its own ARP table. So once it learns the MAC address of the IP, the next time it will not broadcast, because it already know where this particular MAC address exists on the network. So it will directly send the communication onto this MAC address. So there will be no ARP request generation for every packet. ARP request will only be generated only for the initial communication. Rest of the things will be only based on the data that we send. And also we can see here the types. Okay, so this type, it is dynamic. Okay, as you can observe, this entire thing, it is actually dynamic. And there are some sections called static. Static is nothing but which is already fixed with respect to the interface or with respect to the entry for the manual. But whereas this dynamic, the main important part of the ARP protocol is it is in dynamic in nature. Dynamic in the sense, before issuing this command, are we doing any kind of changes in the operating system to actually make these entries? You can see there are a lot of entries which is already there. Okay, we are not doing any kind of changes with respect to these entries. So it is dynamic in nature. Based on the packets that the system receives, the system itself will build an ARP table. Okay, so that is how it is in dynamic in nature. So from the packets itself, it will try to learn, okay, for this IP address, this is the MAC address. For this 10.3, this is the MAC address. For this multicast, this is the MAC address. So based on the communication only, that system will try to build its own ARP table. Every operating system will actually do this, right? So that is why ARP is dynamic in nature. So what I will do is I will try to start the session. Now, what I am trying to do is in this display filter, I am trying to find the communication only with respect to ARP, because we are only trying to check this communication. Okay. Till now, I didn't have any kind of communication. But before that, what I will do is, one thing we have to remember is there is again a command called deletion of all these ARP entries. So whenever there is a deletion of ARP entries, we need to understand that we have to run the system in administrator mode. So ARP-D space star, that means I'm trying to entirely clear the cache or the table of this ARP. Okay, now it is clean. Now I'm trying to communicate to a particular device called 10.5. Let's say this is the destination machine on which I'm trying to send the communication. Okay, or else I'll do one thing, I'll try to communicate on another machine. Okay, right. Now we can see there are two communications. I have ping to 10.5 as well as 10.3. So these two machines, I don't know where actually these machines are located on the network, but I just want to know what is the corresponding MAC addresses for this machine so that I can start the communication. So I have issued a simple command called ping 192.168.10.5 and ping 192.168.10.3 to know whether these systems are located on the network or not. Now I have made this entry with ARP. Now we can see I have captured these packets. So as we have discussed, what is the ARP, the first initial packet, because I don't know where this 10.3 is located on the machine. Okay, so this 10.3, oh, I'm sorry, actually 10.5 is my system IP address. So that is where initial I didn't get. So this 10.3, I'm asking where from 10.5 I am trying to start a communication with 10.3, but I don't know where this 10.3 is located. So my intention is to get the MAC address of the machine or the exact physical location of the machine which is connected to its 10.3. Now here I can observe the first packet is called ARP request, as we have seen, because this is the first communication. So now here you can observe in the earlier example where we have seen the packet, the type is IP, because in the Ethernet we have broadcast. The first destination MAC address is all Fs. Why? Because I don't know where this communication has to be sent, because I don't know where this system is located on the network. So it is a broadcast. That means this packet will be sent to each and every system on the network. But I don't know what is my MAC address, so I will fill it. So my source MAC address will be this. Now you can observe in the earlier example we have seen type as IP. That means it has some linkage to the IP. But in this example, the type is ARP. So 0806 nothing but ARP. And you can observe after this type, there is the parameters with respect to ARP, but there is no communication other than ARP. That means ARP doesn't have any link to its upper layer protocol. Okay. So I'm saying this ARP. Again, we have the header values for this ARP. What it says, what is the hardware type? It is Ethernet. The value is 108001. What is the protocol type from which we are getting? Because I'm also using the IP address to get the communication resolved to MAC address. So I'm using the 32-bit IP address mechanism. So hardware size is 6 into 8, 48-bit. Protocol size is 4 into 8, 32-bit. And here we can observe the opcode. So this is the operation I'm using in ARP. Now here, if it is 1, that means it is a ARP request, right? And we can see the source sender address is mine and the IP address is mine 10.5. But here again, you can observe the target MAC address is all zeros, because I don't know what is a target MAC address. This is what I need to find out. But I don't know what, but I know what is the target IP address. So I'm filling it with its destination IP address. So this is how the ARP request will look like. Now, once this packet is sent to all the systems on the network, because it is a broadcast, all the systems will actually receive this packet. But who will respond? I am specifically asking for 10.3. Now I got a reply saying that we can observe. Okay, 10.3 is at 08 so and so MAC address. So this is a ARP reply. The earlier one, it is a ARP request. The second one, it is a ARP reply. Now this is coming from 10.3. So this destination will become my MAC address because it is being sent from 10.3, and this source is nothing but the MAC address of 10.3. It is filled now. Earlier it was all zeros. Now it is filled. Now again it is type ARP because it is 0806. There is again no upper link protocol. Now again we have ARP header section. We have Ethernet. What is the hardware type? What is the protocol type? What is the hardware size, protocol size? Now here we can understand the difference, right? In the earlier one, in the ARP request, the opcode is 1, whereas in the ARP reply, the opcode is 2. Now here you can see all the parameters have been filled. Now this is the MAC address of 10.3. This is the MAC address of 10.5, right? Our communication is done. Now we have got the MAC address of this particular 10.3. So whenever the 10.5 next time, whenever it wants to communicate to 10.3, again, it will not initiate these ARP packets. Why? Because it already knows where this MAC address is located. So there is no need for this ARP communication to come into picture. ARP communication is only done only at the beginning of the communication if the MAC address is not known by the host which is starting the communication. So whenever the host knows where this MAC address is located, it will directly fill the communication and start communicating with the device, or else it will only go for the ARP request and reply before starting the communication. So this is with respect to data link. So the logical address which I know, now I am using this ARP or the address resolution protocol at the data link or the layer 2 to pinpoint or to know the exact physical location of the machine on the network. Now I use this logical address to convert to the physical address. Now start the communication to send to its destination. I hope this is the information is clarified, or any kind of information we can see. So we have seen the ARP request and response. If the opcode is 0x001, then it is ARP request. If the opcode is 0002, then it is a ARP reply. Now, as we have seen, ARP-A is one command to actually list all the associated IP addresses as well as the MAC addresses, and state dynamic is nothing but to understand whether it is updated automatically or whether it is being updated manually. So there may be some sort of cases where we need to manually update the hardware addresses. Then in that scenarios, the ARP-S, the static entry, can also be used where we can manually insert the MAC as well as the IP address. Now, there are again a lot of concepts in the ARP also. There is one thing called gracious ARP, which will be used with respect to the communication whenever it starts. Okay, this is mostly used, like one such case is called the IP address conflict. IP address conflict, which can be used. The conflicts, let's say we have seen some of the issues where we can see that the IP address conflict has been done on the system. So how this system will come to know there is an IP address conflict? Because whenever the system starts, it sends these kind of packets of ARP where you can see the source as well as the destination IP addresses will be of the same system. So if the other system will also detect the same kind of IP, then it will give a conflict. So there is some mechanism which will be used for this gracious ARPs. But in a security point of view, whenever we are trying to capture any of the packets on the network, if you see a lot of gracious ARPs, then be cautious, because gracious ARPs can also be used by the attackers to actually change the MAC address of the systems also. So in that case, we also need to have a look. That is what we have put this particular point in the slide. Okay. Because there are concepts like ARP poisoning, which I'm not going much into because there are some sessions on this also. where I can poison the communications of both the systems. Why? Because we have seen that ARP is dynamic in nature. Dynamic in the sense, we also, as we said, with respect to security, we also need to understand the loopholes of the protocols also. Like we have seen the advantage of ARP. What is the advantage of ARP? That means we want to translate the IP address to the MAC address to know the machine address. But again, one important aspect what we have seen is with respect to the dynamic state. What is the dynamic state? Are we updating any kind of IP to MAC address mapping on the system? No. The system automatically updates. This is the loophole that will be used by the hackers or the attackers or any kind of hacking this man in the middle attacks tools. There is one concept called man in the middle attack, where what happens is, now let's say this PC1 wants to talk to PC2. Okay, now let's say this is an attacker, and this is the believe it or not, this is mostly the high successful attack in the internal environment, because ARP works in the internal scenarios. So if this particular thing, now let's say this particular 91.1 is trying to communicate to 91.2 and this communication, but there is one system on the LAN, an attacker machine with a MAC address of CC. Okay, now he wants to check the communication on PC1 to PC2. Directly it is not possible. So what it will do, first he will craft a packet, okay, the ARP packet, saying that the MAC address of 91.2, because this is the 91.2 of PC2 MAC address, sorry, 91.3. So the MAC address of 91.3 is CC. Okay, so this packet will be crafted by the attacker and it will be sent to PC1. So actually what should happen in the normal communication, this 91.1, whenever it talks to 91.3, the BB will be updated in its table. But here what I'm doing, I am updating this IP address as CC. Similarly, now for PC2 also, what the attacker will do, similarly, he will update saying that 91.1 is also at CC. That means again for this, instead of this MAC address, I am updating my MAC address to this PC also, because as ARP is dynamic in nature, so the dynamic behavior will be used to update this MAC addresses. Now, in this MAC address table, 91.3 is located at CC. For this machine, 91.1 is located at CC. Now, CC belongs to the attacker or the man in the middle. Now, whenever there is a communication between PC1 and PC2, this communication will be transferred via attacker PC. So whatever may be the communication, that will be tapped here, right? So this is one of the simple attack that can be possible using man in the middle attacks. So again, there are some tools or which can actually keep a continuous check on the ARP changes, because that is dynamic in nature. Once we need to, if there is a change in the MAC address with respect, let's say there is a communication on the IP with respect to a certain MAC address, but once the MAC address changes of this IP, it will give an alert so that these kind of ARP spoofings can be detected. Okay, so this is one of the flaw in the ARP protocol, which can be used to exploit the vulnerability. Similarly, any kind of attack or any kind of security loopholes can also be possible with the help of loopholes in the protocols. That is where the protocols need to be really understood, even with respect to the application layer also. Now, let's say there are a lot of attacks on the web. Again, web is nothing but it works on HTTP protocol. So if we know what are the kind of parameters or the methods or the kind of stuff that is used into the HTTP or the application kind of scenarios, then again, using that, we can use the same kind of methodology to actually secure ourselves. That anyway we'll discuss in the coming sessions, right? So this is where the protocols can be used along with the useful functionality. The same can also be exploited. Okay, so this is with respect to the ARP. And the other protocol which we have, the upper layer protocol, is called IP protocol. If we need a break, then we'll go for a break of 5 minutes if Atul agrees, or else we'll continue.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Shall we go for 5 minutes break?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, we'll take a 5 minutes break, then we'll continue the session. Suit the TCP IP, we generally say, because IP plays an also important role, because IP or the internet protocol will be used for end-to-end delivery of the datagrams, because this is what our addressing scheme will be used for. And one such feature also for IP is called fragmentation, because we have seen that MTU size of the Ethernet is only restricted to 1500 bytes. But what if the communication is more than 1500 bytes? So there should be some mechanism for the fragmentation and reassembly of the packets. So that also will be taken care by the IP protocol. And also we have in the network layer, we have certain path related protocol also, like the network related network layer will also do the best path as well as the communication establishment. Because now let's say I want to send a letter from Hyderabad to Delhi. So there may be a lot of routes which are available to actually send this particular letter from Hyderabad to Delhi. So it may be via Nagpur, it may be via Mumbai, it may be via Bhubaneswar, or there may be a lot of paths available. But out of this, we generally select the best path or the shortest route to actually reach from Hyderabad to Delhi. Similarly, the network layer or the protocols, routing protocols will also do the same to actually select the best path to send the communication from one point to the other point. So along with this, we also need the addressing mechanism for actually sending these packets. So for this, we use IP protocol. Again, as we have discussed in the earlier sessions, we have two versions. Actually, we have some versions like 1, 2, 3, and we have 5, 7, and there are some research also going on. But most prominently, we use 4 and 6. 4 was already in use, and 6 is the current thing which we are trying to use. And as we discussed the IP routing, because we need to transfer the packets from one network to the other network, and also using the best path or the least least hop path. So that is where we generally use this IP routing also. So whenever we see the routes, this is how it looks like. For the destination, what is the gateway? Because whenever we are sending a packet from one network to the other network, there should be some intermediate device, like it's like a translator. Like if someone knows Hindi and someone knows Telugu, so there should be a kind of translator to actually convert this particular Hindi to Telugu. So similarly, we have gateway device or specifically routers, which understands both the networks and try to send the communication from one network to the other network. So similarly, we have for this destination, let's say for 1.1. Okay, so for 1.1, if I want to reach from 31.0, where should I go? So I should reach this router, because this is the last router that is connected. Sorry. So this is the last router that is connected to reach 1.1, because 1.1 is directly connected to this router. So I have to reach till 11.1 to actually reach this communication. Similarly, for 41.0 network, if I want to reach, so I need to reach till 21.2, because 21.2 is connected to this 41.0 network. Similarly, we have these flags. U is nothing but the user and H is nothing but the host. If we have seen the flag like UH, that means this particular destination is the on the same interface. Okay, so if I want to go for this IP, so as we have already seen in the yesterday's class, like out of class A, 0 and 127 are not used for the normal communication. Out of this, what they have done is 127 series they have reserved for this local interface. Because whenever we see in any kind of application testing, we have already seen it in a number of use cases in our day-to-day life. Now let's say if we want to test an application, what generally we'll do, we'll simply open a browser and type like localhost, right? So what is this localhost? Localhost is nothing but which is pointed to this 127.0.0.1, which is nothing but whenever we install the operating system, this IP address is already attached to this local interface, or the default IP address that will come as part of this interface. So whenever we test any kind of local interface or the local host testing, the packet will be rerouted itself. So this is where this routing will come. Even to reach destination, again the packet will be routed onto the gateway itself. So the packet will not go out, but it will again go to the local interface and come back. So the operating system will test whether the packet is working fine or not, or the communication is working fine or not. And if there are multiple interfaces on the routers, now according to that, the interface will be selected for selecting this routing path. So if we come to the IP header, so we have these important parameters in the IP header. The first one is called the IP version. If it is version 4, then we have a number 4. The header length. So generally what happens is, as you have seen, 1500 bytes is the maximum Ethernet header length. But out of this, IP header will have its own header length. So, I mean, generally this will be removed from the total length of the packet. So if we see a number here, then we have to multiply it with 4 bytes. So if we see the header length as 20 bytes, that means we'll see the number as 5. Okay, the type of service, we have certain specific type of services, like if there is a priority needed or any kind of session that is needed to establish on based on the protocol, like let's say there is a telnet session. Okay, I need to give more priority to this. So that kind of options can be given on type of service section. And this is the total length of the packet, the entire packet. And this is identification fragment, which we're talking about, which also helps in fragmentation. So the fragmentation ID will be used to actually convert the packet into multiple chunks. So if it is more than 1500 bytes, using this fragmentation, we can divide the packet into number of packets. So this R is reserved flag, and this DF is do not fragment, which is related to the fragmentation ID. And whenever MF is set, that is more fragment is set to 1, that means the destination system will understand that whatever the packet that is coming is not a single packet. There are more packets yet to come. Okay, so based on that fragmentation ID, we have a fragment offset, which is nothing but a like indication to the other packet which is coming on the wire. And the other important parameter on the IP header is called time to live. We'll see what is time to live. And this is the protocol, the link to the above upper layer protocol. Usually 06 is nothing but TCP. If it is 17, it is UDP. So based on the value, the upper layer protocols will be there. And this is the header checksum value of IP header. And the rest of things will be the source IP address and the destination IP addresses. And these options will have some data related to the type of service we generally use. Let's say in terms of routing protocols, there may be some routing information or the paths. So that kind of information will be stored in the options tab. And the rest of thing is the data with respect to the other things. Like we have seen, the first one is the version, the header length, the type of service or the differential service. Then we have total length. Then we have identification with respect to fragmentation. With respect to the fragmentation, we have do not fragment and more fragments, and as well as fragment offset. The other one is time to live and the protocol to the upper layer, and the rest of things source and destination IP addresses. So with respect to the protocol, which we have seen here, we have some values with respect to here. So along with TCP and UDP, there are some other protocol also which the IP can link to. Okay, one example is ICMP, the Internet Control Message Protocol. The common ping command which we use will actually use ICMP protocol only. So we have TCP and UDP also. The next one is the IGRP, or the Interior Gateway Routing Protocols. Some routing protocols are also there which are associated with respect to IP. Okay. And this is the fragmentation theory which we are talking about. So if there is more data that need to be pushed beyond the MTU size, then we use the fragmentation. So what happens is, let's say if you are trying to send 4 MB of file, but the MTU is only 1500 bytes. So this 4 MB will be divided into number of packets of 1500 bytes, and that will be sent to the destination thing. Now the destination machine will actually try to check for this. If more fragments is set to 1, then it will wait till all the fragment or all the packets of that fragments of that packet will reach the destination. Then once all the fragments are reached, then it will actually process further data, right? So this is one example of the fragmentation which is captured on the Wireshark. I'm trying to show that in example with a screenshot. Now let's say 91.3 has been sending a fragmented packet. So here we can observe this is a 3 packet fragmented IP. Actually, the packet belongs to name query, but as the data is more, then this particular packet has been converted into 3 packets, right? So the destination machine will wait for 1, 2, and 3. Now let's say this is the fragmented packet. keep more focus on this more fragments flag. Okay, here it is set to 1. That means now the destination machine will understand, okay, if it is set to 1, there are more flags or more fragments yet to come, and the fragment offset is 0. Now let's say this is the second packet. Again, we can see the more fragments is set to 1. And in the earlier example, we can see the identification, it is 921. Even in the second packet also, this particular thing is 921. Again, more fragments is set to 1. And the fragment offset earlier it was 0. Now it has been changed to 1480. That means this is the second packet from where it is started. Now on the final packet, the fragmentation packet 3, now you can observe that identification is again 921, but the more fragments is 0. That means whatever the fragments that has come in the earlier packets, that now it has been cleared. Now this is the last packet and using this fragmented offset. Now all these 3 fragments will be combined and now the destination system will try to process the information, right? And also one more important concept, as I said, the time to live. Time to live is also one such important concept. I think I'm not going much into the vulnerabilities because this will be discussed more in detail in the later part. But as I said, again, each and every protocol has its own set of vulnerabilities along with its functionalities. So using IP also, there are a lot of vulnerabilities that are possible, like access and bandwidth controls. We can manipulate the bandwidth controls, even addressing mechanisms, because IP address can be also be spoofed, and packet fragmentation, because there are some attacks like instead of directly sending the payload in a single packet, an attacker can send the payload in a multiple fragments so that it can try to pass the security devices, but the destination machine upon receiving all the fragmented packets, the payload can be executable on the destination packet. So these kind of attacks are also possible using packet fragmentation, and also even using the source routing options, we can also change the routing table also. So those kind of vulnerabilities are also possible with respect to the IP. Okay. And with respect to the ICMP, ICMP is one additional with respect to IP, because IP is not an what we say, it is not completely stateful. That means or the connection oriented. There should be some feedback mechanism which is associated to IP. So that is where this ICMP will act as some additional feedback mechanism to the internet protocol. So generally we have an ICMP echo request similar to like ARP. We'll send a request, and based on the request we'll get some reply from the destination machine, but again in turn this will use the IP protocol. Okay, so to make IP more reliable, we generally use the feedback mechanism using the ICMP. Again, there are a lot of codes on the ICMP, and even there are a lot of attacks that are possible, because the scanning techniques which you're talking about along with information gathering, we'll try to, let's say a simple ping command is part of ICMP, where we can ping to a destination system. If the destination system replies, like as we have seen in the previous example, let's say I want to know whether this particular system 10.3 is up or not. What I will do, this is one such example through of ICMP scanning. I am using a ping command. I am trying to ping 192.168.10.3. Now you can observe in the previous this example, I am getting a reply. So once I get a reply, I come to know that this particular system is up. So this is one simple scanning technique, right? So this ICMP along with the feedback mechanism of IP will also be used to actually identify the systems which are live or which are on the thing. So from a security aspect, what actually we'll do is, let's say if you talk about any firewalls or any security devices, most of the security device will actually block these ICMP messages. Why? Because whenever I'm trying to ping, now the same example, when you try to ping, let's say you take this as a case study, try to ping a machine with a firewall and without a firewall. Let's say on the destination machine, there is a firewall. Now try to ping using the same command. And if without firewall, try to ping the same machine. So mostly we'll get the reply without firewall. And when a firewall is opened up, or when the firewall is turned on, we'll not get any reply, because basically what happens is the security features will try to block the ICMP, because as we have seen, along with the feedback, we may also leak some information to the other party also. So it is very important in terms of security to actually hide the information that is available. So most of the security devices, only some sort of the ICMP like the trace route or some kind of information is only allowed, but rest of the communication will be blocked by the security mechanisms or the security devices. Like as we have seen, the same as TCP is mentioned in the protocol, in the IP, the ICMP will also be mentioned. So whenever we see the ICMP header, it's a very simple header with only type and code. So based on the type and code, we'll come to understand. As we can see, there is a lot of sections in the table. If the type is 00, type is 0 and code is 0, that means the meaning is it's echo reply or the ping reply which get from the machine. What is a ping reply? Nothing but the system is saying that it is live on the network. Similarly, if the type is 3, then for this type 3, there is a thing called whatever the unreachable kind of messages, all these come under type 3. For this, again, for code 0, the network is unreachable. For code 1, the host is unreachable. For code 2, the protocol is unreachable. So we have different sections again with respect to the type and code. So there are a lot of types and codes in the ICMP for which the feedback will be provided for the IP. So as we said, the ICMP again is as a broad 2 categories, query as well as error reporting. For error reporting, we have type 3, 4, 11, 15. But whereas for query, we have 8, 13, 17, and 10, right? So this is, we have already seen the destination unreachable, or there may be some mechanisms where the source quench or the system is unable to take the entire load or the entire bandwidth at a time. Then we get the source quench, like ITMP security failures. So for each and every, and as we have seen the simple scanning technique ICMP, where I can use the ping command to scan for a single host or to scan the entire network range. So whenever I say echo request is nothing but a ping is one program which is used for generating this echo request. If I get a ping echo request and if I get echo reply, that means ping reply, then we can say that system is up. Okay. The other important part we need to understand, as we have seen the time to live concept in the IP using traceroute, because mostly we will be using in for most of the troubleshoots, the traceroute command will be using. But what traceroute will do is the parameter that is available, that TTL value in the IP. What happens is TTL, as the name itself suggests, the time to live. So if there is no expiry for the packet that is generated on the network, so the packet keep on traveling in the network for it's not a mortal thing, right? So for this kind of packets, because the packet that is generated, it has to be discarded at one point. So for this, the time to live parameter will be used. So whenever the time to live crosses a gateway, I mean, it switches from one network to the other network, the time to live parameter will be decreased by 1 by the gateway device. So whenever the time to live value becomes 0, then that particular gateway or the router or any of the device which is transferring that packet will discard there itself. By seeing the TTL value as 0, the packet is no more. That means it's dead actually. So that is where this TTL value will be used. But using this functionality, we will try to find out the kind of devices that are available from our source to destination. I think we have most of the times we have seen this trace route, right? We just want to see whether the traffic is able to send from my machine to the other machine. So we'll simply do the trace route of that destination machine and try to see, are there any kind of intermediate devices which are available and I'm able to reach the destination machine. But how that is possible? So what happens is, in the trace route, let's say this 6.7.9 want to talk to 10.1.1. So what it will do is, this packet will actually reach from, let's say, from 1 to 2 to 3 to, then it will go to this particular machine. But what happens is, whenever I'm trying to send this communication to the first hop, so what I will do is, this packet using trace route, I will only mention the TTL value as 1 and I will send it to the first router. So whenever the packet reaches the first router, this packet, the TTL value will be decremented by 1. Now, what it will become? Now, instead of 1, the TTL will become 0. So once the TTL becomes 0, will it be forwarded to the next router? No. So the packet will be dropped. Now, as this is also a ICMP message, so this feedback will be sent to the destination saying that the packet has been dropped. Now it will note that from which IP the packet has been dropped. So this is my first entry. Now again, what I will do? Now I will increase the TTL value by 2. Now it reaches the first router, decremented by 1. Now the value become 1. That means still it can travel to another router. Now it will travel to the second router. Now after traveling to the second router, it will become 0. Now again, the destination or the feedback will be sent again to the destination. So I will get the second router IP address. Now I will make it the TTL value as 3 and forward it. So it will reach as first router decrement by 1, second router decrement by 1. Again at the third router, it will become 0. Again, the packet will be discarded. The same message will be sent back. So this is how we'll actually come to know what are the intermediate devices till my destination. This is how the traceroute will be used using the TTL value along with the ICMP feedback mechanism. So the combination, using the combination, we can come to know what are the intermediate devices between the source as well as the destination. Right? So I will come to know what are the paths that is available. I think ICMP fragmentation we have already seen. So even based on the ICMP also, using the vulnerabilities, we can do a lot of attacks. Like the denial of service attack is one simple attack. So where I'll flood the end system or the network with a lot of ping packets. Now what happens? I will not wait for the reply, but I'm keep on sending the request packets only. So what happens? See, mostly denial of attacks, what happens is it will fill the buffer size of the kind of registers that are having. Now let's say as a person, I can weigh only 50 kgs on my shoulder. Now suddenly if a 75 kg is put on my shoulder, so I can sustain for some point of time. Now let's say if there is double the amount weight or 100 kgs or 200 kgs, so I cannot actually carry that much weight on my shoulder. So similarly, in the DOS also, if we keep on putting a lot of information that is more than the value of the storage or the registry values, then it keep on overflowing of the information that is again coming onto as part of that. So there is where most of the denial of service attacks are possible. So in that we can also use the ICMP as also one of the attacks where this vulnerability can be exploited. Okay, again we have a lot of manipulation. So before quickly wrapping up, I'll just move on to TCP. Then we'll see some of the attacks of Nmap or the scanning techniques. Now we have seen one such scanning techniques using ICMP, where I can use a simple ping command to know the system whether it is up or not. Next, the TCP. I'll just quickly move on to the TCP. This is one such transport layer protocol which is used for end-to-end connectivity. We generally say the mechanism as the three-way handshake, because the three-way handshake is one such concept where before transferring the communication, the source as well as the destination will come to an understanding for transferring the communication. So once this three-way handshake is established, and once the source and destination will come to a conclusion, then only the actual data will be transferred, or the application layer data will be transferred between the two systems, right? So TCP has a lot of key characteristics, like it can maintain the reliable communication, and we also have the packet sequencing communication. That means if there is a drop of packet, then again the packet can be resent to the destination. And also we have a retransmission of lost segments and also segment integrity, even the flow control. So the kind of bandwidth that I can push to the destination can also be decided, and even the multiplexing connections. Multiplexing is nothing but, now let's say this is the system I'm using. Now let's say I am, sorry, the browser is not open. Now let's say I am opening a browser. Okay, now here I'm opening google.com. At the same time, I may be opening facebook.com. At the same time, I may be using some other website. So now on a single browser itself, I'm opening a lot of websites. But as you can see, my browser is one, but I'm trying to browse multiple websites. How this is possible? Because of multiplexing of connections using the transport layer. Because the IP address I use on the system is same, and the browser application is also same. But I can maintain different kind of connections possible to 3 different websites at the same time, right? So this is possible with respect to the multiplexing of the connections using TCP. So how this multiplexing is possible? Because of the ports, what we generally call, because a port is a logical number, but generally this port is associated to a service. And whenever we talk about the multiplexing thing, so the IP address along with the port is used in combination to actually decide what are the kind of connections that we are trying to establish. So the common general ports or HTTP we have, if I say port number 80, that is associated to HTTP service. If I say port number 20 and 21, generally these two ports are associated with FTP, one for data and one for commands. If I say 23, then it is Telnet. If I say 53, it is DNS. If I say 25, it is SMTP. So based on the port, I can actually decide what is the kind of service that is taking place. And generally, there are 32 ports that are available on any system. It's not physical port, as I say, it's a logical kind of port mechanism that is available for the deciding the services. So generally, it is from 0 to 65,535, out of which 0 to 1023 are actually reserved, and from 1024 that can be used by any of the client to actually start a communication. That means if I say port 80, every machine on the internet knows that port 80 is reserved for HTTP. Okay, so like that we have well-known registered ports, and other ports can be used for initiating the connection. So if we talk about the TCP header, so these are the header values we have. The first one is the source port number, because as a client, I also need one port number to actually start a communication along with the IP. So I will take one random port number. Let's say I want to talk to port number 80. Then I'll use this destination port number. Then I have sequence number, acknowledgement number. Sequence number is nothing but a number which is used to whenever there is a flag, the first packet, then all this TCP communication will be used by this sequence number only. Then I have this acknowledgement number. We'll see once the TCP three-way handshake numbers will come, then it is easy to understand. So we have these 6 important flags in TCP communication, out of which this three-way handshake is possible. The one is called SYN flag, or the synchronization flag. This is the first initial packet that is set whenever we start the communication. The second one is called the reset flag. Let's say there is sudden close of connection, then we use this reset connection or reset flag. Then there is an acknowledgement flag. For every data transfer or for giving an acknowledgement to the client, we use this acknowledgement flag. And there is another thing called push flag. Push flag will be used when there is a data transfer. So I will send a push flag to the using for data transfer. Then for every push, I will get an acknowledgement from the destination saying that the data has been successfully reached. And there is one urgent flag. Let's say out of a lot of services, let's say there is a chat communication which is more priority, then that particular chat communication will be set to urgent priority, so that the urgent flag will be set to 1. Then is a finish flag where I can properly close the connection between the two systems. So these are some of the sample TCP packets, or else we'll try to capture this in the Ethernet flag. Again, what I will do is I am trying to start the communication, continue without saving. I am removing this ARP because I will simply try to see that. Now let's say I am opening a browser. I am trying for google.com. Okay, I can see a lot of communication that is happening. Now let's say I go for TCP. Okay. Okay, I think all the packets have not been established. So what I will do, I will close this, close the browser. Okay. Again, I will open this communication. Okay, so there are packets which are already converted. Oh, sorry. Why actually I'm not getting this? I have selected for the other interface. Actually, I have 2 interfaces on this, so I'm unable to get this. So what I will do is, instead of that, I'm very sorry for this. I have already another website on this, 192.168.10.3. Okay, so this is one sample website which is running on 10.3. Okay, now I'll try to show this. Now you can see there is a lot of communication that is already done. I'm stopping this communication. Okay, now you can see this is the three-way handshake which we're talking about. Okay, so I want to open a website actually from 10.5. This is my source IP address to 10.3, right? This is my intention actually. I want to browse a website like what we are getting on this. But before this application or whatever the response I got this page, what happens is before this HTTP communication, you can see the HTTP is located on the 4th or 5th packet. But before that, we can see there are some three TCP communication has already been done. Why? Because now let's say 10.5 want to establish a communication with 10.3, which is running on port number 80. So this is the first packet that is being sent. So we can see the synchronization packet, or in the TCP header, we can see the communication or the flags which are used for this. Okay, so in the flag section we can see SYN is set to 1. Okay, so and you can see the SYN flag is set to 1. Okay, and also we can, for easy understanding, you can see the sequence number is 0. So this is the first packet in the communication. Okay, now go for second packet. Now what happens in the second packet is, now I am starting the communication with a SYN packet. Now 10.3 is saying that it is ready to start the communication to me. So what it will do, it is sending an acknowledgement. Now how I will know as a that this particular system is sending an acknowledgement? Because the earlier SYN packet I have sent is 0. Now you can see the acknowledgement is 1. That means whatever the synchronization packet that I'm sending in the previous communication, if I get an increment of that acknowledgement packet, then I will come to know that, okay, the client is, the destination also ready to start the communication. Now along with this, there is another SYN packet is also sent from the 10.3. Now this acknowledgement is acknowledgement to the SYN sent by me. Now the 10.3 is also want to reconfirm that whether I'm again ready to start the communication or not. Now again, this sequence number is the sequence number of 10.3. Now I am also ready for the communication. So what I will do from 10.5, now you can see in the third packet, acknowledgement is 1. Okay, so I'm sending only the acknowledgement to 10.3. So I'm sending in, say, I'm starting the communication, getting an acknowledgement from the client, and again client is requesting for an my acceptance, and I'm accepting the communication. Now once this SYN plus ACK and ACK, once this three-way communication is done, then only I'm getting the actual HTTP communication or the application layer protocol or the application kind of communication. And you can see for every, even though we have in between TCP, this TCP is only for the push as well as the acknowledgements. For every data that is sent, we'll receive an acknowledgement. Okay, so this is how the TCP three-way handshake will be done. So using this, we have some of the sample techniques of connecting, because as we have seen, for this there is a tool called Nmap. Again, this particular tool is used for scanning tool. We have two versions of it. Zenmap is one version only used for Windows as a GUI version. For rest of the operating systems, we have the command line version called as Nmap. Even for Windows, whenever we install this Zenmap, Nmap is used as a command line version and Zenmap will be used as the GUI version. Now, this particular tool is used as an scanning technique, because what happens is, as we have seen in the earlier communication, ICMP, as we have seen, ICMP can also be used for scanning techniques. But this ICMP scanning techniques are blocked by most of the firewalls or the security devices. But still we want to know that whether the target machine is up or not, or what are the kind of services that are running on the target machine. So for that, we need to have one such tool. But anyway, this TCP, because if a service is running, the TCP or UDP has to load onto the device. So by using this TCP and UDP transport layer communication, now this Nmap tool, what it will do is it will use this TCP and the UDP communication, which is already allowed, to understand what are the kind of scenarios we have. So I am just using the target address. I'm giving as 10.3, and there are again different kind of scanning techniques onto this. We have SYN scan, we have acknowledgement scan, where only a certain set of packets are sent. Now in this GUI, it's an intent scan. I'm trying to scan all the ports. Just click on scan. Okay, I think it is taking some time to run. Okay, or else I'll also run this Nmap command line tool, the same kind of tool. I'll give Nmap space 192.168.10.3. Okay, so you can see that Nmap has been started. Now I can see once it has been done, there are a lot of open ports which I can see on this particular tool. So once I scan this particular tool, now by seeing these open ports, one thing I will come to know that this particular system is up, and along with this, all these ports are also available to run. Which are the ports which are open on this destination machine. So there is port 80, there is port 135, there is port 139, 443, 445, and 338, and even remote desktop 3306 MySQL. So there are a lot of other ports are also which are available on this particular system that is available. So along with the system, I will also come to know, and as I said, we also need to run Wireshark in parallel. Why? Because now here we can understand. So here we can see once I run, I have given only a small command nmap space IP address, and I've got this section. But in the Wireshark, you can see there are around 2,100 packets have been generated in the meanwhile, right? So what happens in the background? Now I'm trying to start a communication on 445. Let's say this is 135, 80, 80, and all these ports. Now you can see for certain ports, I have received the acknowledgement. Let's say this 445, okay? Or let's say this 443. So for 443, I'm getting the acknowledgement. So this acknowledgement is only possible when the port is up and the server is ready to accept the communication. So whenever we receive the acknowledgement, that means the port is up and I'm able to connect to the particular port. So as a scanning technique, my main intention is to identify the ports which are running on the system. I may not be connect to actually send the data, but our intention is only to understand the communication that or to understand the open ports. So that is where there are different kind of scanning techniques where I cannot, where as an attacker, or I will not actually send the data, but I will only just come to try to know what are the open ports that are available on the destination. Now, in some cases, I can see on port number 995, I'm sending a SYN packet, but simply I'm getting a reset packet. That means, yeah, I can easily understand that if I get a reset packet, the port is closed, because whenever a port is closed, there is no need for actually establish a connection onto the port because the port is already closed. So by assessing the kind of communication that receives, the tool can able to understand what are the open ports and what are the closed ports. So for all the ports which the tool receives the acknowledgement, it will show those things as open, and for the rest of the things it says the ports are closed, right? So this is how the nmap can be used. Actually, there are different kind of scanning techniques which we are already given in the sheet or in the e-learning mode, where we can actually go for a clear kind of thing. But I will try to, before winding up, just we'll try to have one more kind of thing. Once I'll try to run this administrator and see in the GUI kind of thing, because GUI will also give more insight into that, because for command line we need to issue a lot of commands, but whereas in GUI we can have a lot of things. Even it will also try to give the kind of operating system details. Even there are commands for in command line also. Now let's say if I type nmap -O and give the IP address, okay. This is one switch which is used to know the operating system that is being on the destination machine. So by assessing the operating system, now you can see the operating system that is running on the destination is Microsoft Windows. It may be 7 or 2008 or 8.1. So it will not give the a complete assurance, but it will say that, okay, there may be chances that it may be any one of the versions. It may be Windows 7, it may be 2008 or Windows 8.1. And also because why actually it is trying to say, because of the kind of ports that are available and kind of version the behavior of the system that it is performing. So by using this kind of techniques, actually we can come to know what is the system that is being used, what are the open ports on the system, and along with that, what are the kind of services that are accessed on the destination machine using the scanning techniques. So again, this nmap, it uses again both the ICMP scanning techniques as well as TCP and UDP scanning techniques also, because our ultimate intention is, because as an attacker, once I gather the information, the next techniques we use generally is for the scanning, because we need to understand the kind of ports that are open. So based on the services that are open, what we'll do, we'll try to explore more into the vulnerabilities that are associated with the services that are open on the destination system. Now, based on the vulnerabilities that are associated or exist on the destination or with respect to service, now I can go for different kind of methodologies or payloads or attack scenarios to actually get into the system. So this is how this can be used. So I'm stopping my presentation. If there are any queries, then I can quickly